Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. So behind me is a 2022 Dodge Challenger SRT Super Stock. Huge shout out to Alta Auto Group for providing this muscle car for me today. Make sure you check out their website. All that info is down in the description. They're always getting in some awesome inventory, so definitely check them out. But the Super Stock that you see behind me is finished off in black, and they have a starting MSRP right around $85,000. And to start off today's review, let's take a look at what powers this Super Stock. Underneath the hood is the 6.2 liter supercharged high output HEMI V8 paired to the 8-speed automatic. It pumps out 807 horsepower around 6,400 RPM and 707 pound-feet of torque around 4,500 RPM. That power sent to the rear wheels. This weighs in right around 4,400 pounds. It'll do 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds with a top speed of 168 miles an hour. And it has a fuel capacity of 18.5 gallons. You'll expect to see around 13 miles per gallon in the city and 21 out on the highway. This has a wheelbase of 116.2 inches. Its overall length is 197.5. It has a width of 79.2 and a height of 57.2 inches. And now as we move on to the exterior styling for this Super Stock, let's start off with both of the hood inlets to provide a lot of cooling to that 6.2 liter engine. They are functional as you would expect, and they give this hood a very nice bulge on both sides just to add to the aggressive front end design. Now right in the middle, there's a large narrow grille to provide even more cooling along with the lower section. And then there's even functional cutouts within the turn signal and the DRL on both sides to add even more cooling. So it's awesome to see that hollow design, and it's still being utilized for the DRL and the turn signal. Now this also has halogen headlights. The DRL and turn signal are LEDs, of course. And as you can tell, if you haven't already, this has a massive front splitter. It extends to the sides of the vehicles and is nicely incorporated into the wide body design with those fender flares. Just gives it a really nice appearance. Very, very large, especially for this vehicle. So I love how kind of boxy the front end design is. Very iconic for the Challenger. And as we move on to the side now, the Super Stock gets a really unique set of 18-inch wheels. They're 11 inches wide with that 5-spoke design. This even has Brembo brakes. There's 6 pistons up front, 4 pistons in the rear. The front rotors measure in around 15.4 inches and 14.2 inches in the rear. Wrapped in a Nitto tire, definitely meant for the drag strip or the track. And with the wide body, it accommodates these wheels and tires very nicely. And as you would expect, it's around 2 inches wider on each side than a non-wide body. So it gives it a great look. Now this model also has a sunroof. It has the body colored side mirrors. All of the window trim is blacked out just to tie it in nicely. And there's a great line running just underneath the door handle all the way to the rear end. This has a pretty wide hip to it, especially with that wide body. Definitely gives it a great design. That pillar is pretty large too, just adding to that with more lines coming off of it. And then last up for the rear, this has a trunk mounted spoiler finished off in matte black with the SRT badge, along with the integrated backup camera. The trunk release button is just underneath that. Now this does have LED taillights with that oval design to it. There's parking sensors down below along with the dual exhaust. So with the exterior wrapped up, let's make our way to the cargo space now. So you can use the button on the key fob, or you can quickly just push on that button to release it. And once I open this up, the Challengers have a ton of storage space. There's cutouts on the driver and the passenger side to put in larger items sideways if needed. And the back seats even fold down, making this that much more of a practical vehicle to drive, especially if this is your only vehicle. You can absolutely daily drive this with the amount of storage space that there is. Now up underneath the floor, you can see the sub for the Harman Kardon sound system, as well as access to the battery. So no storage space up underneath there, but you definitely have plenty for this rear cargo space. Now there's no grab handle, but it's really easy to go ahead and shut that. And before we make our way to the interior, this does have remote start. So if I lock it and then double tap this button, it will automatically start up, which is a cool feature to have. We have that trunk release button, as I mentioned earlier, and then I'm going to go ahead and unlock it. Now you can lock and unlock it using this button, or just walking up to it, placing your hand up underneath for it to unlock. Now on the door panel, this has a great design with all the leather and the white stitching. There's the window controls, side mirror adjustments, some brush trim on that release handle. There's also a split design for the storage. So there's a little bit in the back section, a little bit in the front section where you could place a drink, and then that Harman Kardon sound system. Now let's go ahead and move on to the back seats, as this is a 5-seater 2-door vehicle. Now I have the front seat move forwards. From there I can just grab on that handle to move the backrest forwards, and that gives me a good amount of space behind that seat. So at 5'10", I can make my way into the back. Now over on this passenger side, even with the seat all the way back, you do have a little bit of room for your feet and your legs. So full-size adults can fit in the back. There's even an air vent on both sides, so that way you can get some climates to your backseat passengers. Now right in the middle is the armrest, along with 2 cup holders if you need to use those. And I do have a good amount of headspace. Now my head is just up against the headliner, so at 5'10", I'm actually pretty comfortable. I could definitely ride around town, maybe go on a small road trip in the back of this vehicle. So this is functional for 3 people to be in the back. Definitely awesome, especially for the amount of horsepower that this 2-door vehicle has. You can have all of your friends with you and really have some fun in this. So in order to look at the front seats now, I can just push that backwards. And these are cloth. They have the SRT logo right in the middle, white stitching with a 2-tone design, as you saw for those back seats. And they are power operated to be able to move it forwards and backwards. And then the manual recline and incline is in the back there. So with the seat all the way back, let's talk about all the technology for this. Now this has a low door sill, and the door opens up very, very wide. So it's very easy to enter and exit this muscle car. Now the steering wheel has a combination of solid and perforated leather with all these controls to go through that digital gauge cluster. Let's fire this back up in order to do that. So with my foot on the brake, that red button is over on that right side, and we can bring this back to life. And looking at the gauge cluster, on the left side is the tach, miles per hour is on the right side, and the background for those are red, which is a really cool design. Right in the middle is the LCD screen where you can go through a lot more information. There's also some fixed info like fuel gauge and the engine temperature. But in order to go through all of that, all of those controls are on this left side. There's also Bluetooth and voice commands. But right now, if I scroll down, we're going to start on 1, which is the speed limit. So you will see that pop up. I can scroll down to vehicle information, and you can monitor a ton of vitals just depending on what you need to see and the driving that you're doing to be able to pull up all of that information. There's also performance too. So you can go through your 0 to 60, 0 to 100, all of your short distance racing, your braking, G-forces. Very awesome to see all of those pages easily accessible. There's also fuel economy, which is not too important in this vehicle, trip information, you can pull up the audio, any messages you may have, and then the screen setup, you can go through your upper left, upper right, and choose what you want in those areas. So again, just depending on what you'd like to see, you can look at your gears display too, and then just control everything depending on how you'd like it. So it's very, very configurable for that gauge cluster. Over on this right side is all the cruise control settings, and then this does have steering wheel mounted paddle shifters. Just underneath that is volume and tuning. That is on most of the Dodge products. It's pretty cool how it's split between the paddles and those controls. And then over on the left side is the headlight controls, the trunk release, dimmer switches for the gauges. And as we move our way to the middle, we have a lot more information to go through. Now on the bottom is all of the presets. So if I start on the left side, this is music. You can quickly get into climates, go through where you'd like the air to go, the temperature, fan speed. If I click on controls again, this even has heated seats and a heated steering wheel, so you can gain access to those. There's apps to go into, so just depending on what you'd like to see. Controls is a shortcut to what I just showed there. There's also phone when that is paired, different settings. And then the performance page tab has a lot more information to go through, like horsepower, what gear you're in, G-force meter. You can go through all the timers. This is pretty much everything that I just showed in the gauge cluster, just on a larger screen. So you can pull up all these gauges and just monitor everything. And it's really cool to even see live readouts for horsepower and torque. So if I give the vehicle some gas, you can see that adjust along with the diagram here. So that is pretty awesome in a factory vehicle to have everything set up and ready to go. Now there's an air vent on both sides of that. You saw the engine start stop button. And then at the bottom, there's power and volume for the radio. Tuning is on the right side. You can shut that upper screen off if you'd like to. So if you're racing this and you don't want that info visible, you can hide it. There's mute. There's also a shortcut to SRT. So if I push on that, you can actually control the RPM for launch control, look at your shift light. There's also the chiller that you can turn on and off. You can activate line lock. So that's how you can do a burnout, get those tires ready to go. Now, if I click on drive modes now, you can go between track, sport, custom, and auto. And with the red key, you unlock 807 horsepower for this model. You can set it up and have everything ready to go. If we go back to the dashboard, we can go into the race options where I previously just showed some of those items. So it's pretty awesome to see. Launch control is just next to that. And then your creature comforts like parking sensors you can turn on and off. There's also traction control too. And then all of the AC controls are nicely laid out below. So if you're not in that screen in the upper section, you can quickly pull that up. And then next to the shifter is a little bit of storage. If I put this into reverse, this does have the backup camera with the guidelines, making it easy to see. I can go all the way into drive and pop it over into the manual setting. That allows you to use this to shift, or you can actually use these steering wheel mounted paddle shifters if you'd like to. There's 2 cup holders just behind that. And then in the center armrest, there's some auxiliaries and a good amount of storage for all of those items. There's even cutouts for cables, so that way if you're charging electronics, you have a place to run them through. And then the glove box has a split 2-shelf design to give you plenty of room for all of that info. We'll take one last look at these seats, which have a great design to them. And like I mentioned earlier, full sunroof that is manual for the sunshade. All of the controls are up in the middle. This even has a sunglass holder, which is pretty convenient. Garage door buttons and the dome lights are on both sides. As we set off behind the wheel now for this Dodge Challenger SRT Super Stock, I don't have that far of a test drive for today's video, but I will have another Super Stock review where I drove it a little bit farther if you'd like to see that video too. But to have this as a factory muscle car with this much horsepower and torque is pretty insane to see what you can buy and still get a practical vehicle. Now, this being a 5-seater, you can absolutely use this as your daily driver and still have room for other people. You can put items in the back. I think I've even seen some Challengers with a rear hitch, so you can put a bicycle rack or something on the back of your muscle car. Pretty much the ultimate daily driving muscle car if you need all of this space and you want a large 2-seater vehicle, and you also want something that sounds pretty good. So for the short drive that we have today, let's go into the driving modes. We'll put it into track, and since we're not doing anything too crazy, we'll give it a little bit of gas here in the manual setting there. You can hear that supercharger whine. Does not get old. Obviously, this has so much more potential than what I'm throwing at it today. And in general, being a Challenger, it drives very nicely. Like I said earlier, I've been able to drive a different Super Sport or Super Stock, and it drives just like a Challenger. It's very nice, very comfortable and quiet, aside from the Supercharger whine, which sounds so good. I know you'll be able to hear that on the camera. And as far as the interior materials go, you know, it's very nice for this. We have the center screen there, which is easy to use, all of these buttons and everything. So for a track-focused, performance-oriented vehicle, you have everything that you need to daily drive this. So it's really the best of both worlds. So that way you can have the most possible fun that you can have with this and still be comfortable while you're driving to the track and driving home. And we are going to do one last acceleration. What I've noticed too is that this has very tight steering. So even in slow speed situations, it's pretty decent, but it is pretty tight, which is obviously what you want, especially for this vehicle. All right, last mini acceleration for today's video. But that's gonna wrap it up for this 2022 Dodge Challenger SRT Super Stock. Once again, huge shout out to Alta Auto Group for providing this for me today. They're always getting in some awesome inventory, so definitely check out their website. Give this video a huge thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and consider smashing that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our daily uploads. And I will see you all in the next video.